testified again.
Your Honor,
Your claim is dismissed. Your claim is dismissed. Get out of my courtroom. You lied on these people.
For decades, Judge Mathis stood as a symbol of discipline, redemption, and control. A man who turned chaos into order, both on television and in life. But behind that image lay multiple cracks: a rebellious past, public confrontations, and serious accusations that he cheated and fathered a child outside his marriage. And when he and his wife finally filed for divorce, it exposed a private struggle that shocked even his most loyal supporters. The making of Judge Mathis. Before America knew him as Gregory Ellis Mathis, before the courtroom cameras, the moral authority, and the booming voice that filled living rooms every weekday, Judge Greg Mathis was just a boy who grew up with very little protection from the world around him. Gregory Ellis Mathis was born on April 5, 1960, in Detroit, Michigan, at a time when the city was already beginning to fracture under economic pressure, racial tension, and shrinking opportunity. When he was just 4 years old, his father left the family, and that single absence shaped everything that followed. His mother, Alice Mathis, was left to raise Greg and his siblings alone, stretching limited resources across a household that had no margin for error. The family lived in Detroit's public housing projects, places defined not just by poverty, but by constant exposure to crime, instability, and survival thinking. These were environments where young boys learned fast or fell behind faster. Schools existed, but safety and consistency did not always come with them. Greg moved through several schools during his early years: Herman Gardens Elementary School, Peterson Seventh-day Adventist School, and later Wayne Memorial High School. He never stayed long enough to feel settled and always adjusted to new surroundings. By his teenage years, the streets began filling the gaps that home and school could not. Mathis became involved with the Errol Flynns, a Detroit street gang. It wasn't unusual for young men in his neighborhood to drift toward gangs. They offered identity, protection, and a sense of belonging that formal institutions failed to provide. With that involvement came criminal activity, and soon consequences followed. In 1977, Greg Mathis was placed on juvenile probation. For many teenagers around him, that was the beginning of a longer cycle of probation, leading to incarceration, then return. At that point, there was nothing about his trajectory that suggested law school, let alone the bench. He was still deeply embedded in the world he grew up in. Then something happened that forced his life to slow down. While Greg was in juvenile detention, his mother, Alice Mathis, was diagnosed with colon cancer. The illness was serious, and the family needed help immediately. Authorities granted Greg early release so he could care for her. He was suddenly responsible for cooking, cleaning, and helping manage a household while watching his mother battle a life-threatening disease. That responsibility changed the rhythm of his life. The streets no longer dictated his schedule. Survival took a different form. His time went into care, work, and trying to keep the family stable. That period did not erase his past, but it interrupted it long enough for something else to begin. While still on juvenile probation, Mathis earned his general educational development through Operation Push in 1977. It was his first formal academic achievement after falling off the traditional school track. The program emphasized discipline, accountability, and forward motion, concepts that now matched the reality he was living at home. From there, the progress continued. Mathis enrolled at Eastern Michigan University, where he pursued a Bachelor of Science in Public Administration, graduating in 1982. College was not a sheltered experience for him. He worked nights at McDonald's as a swing manager to support himself, often moving straight from work shifts to classes. Sleep was optional. Quitting was not. During his time on campus, Mathis became active in organized causes. He led Free South Africa campaigns and voter registration drives, connecting student activism to broader civil rights movements. These were not abstract causes to him. They reflected the same structural problems he had grown up under, now viewed from a policy and civic perspective. After earning his undergraduate degree, Mathis joined the staff of Detroit City Councilman Clyde Cleveland, gaining first-hand exposure to municipal politics and public service. The work placed him inside the systems that shaped neighborhoods like the one he came from. He continued his education at University of Detroit Law School, earning his Juris Doctor in 1987. Law school sharpened his understanding of his past. He learned the language of statutes, procedure, and constitutional rights, tools he once encountered only as barriers. Alongside his legal training, Mathis deepened his civil rights involvement. He worked with Reverend Jesse Jackson's Push Excel program, later serving as its chairman, focusing on youth education and opportunity. He also served as a national board member of the NAACP and on the board of the Morehouse School of Medicine, establishing himself within major national institutions. In 1995, Greg Mathis was elected as a judge of Michigan's 36th District Court, serving until 1998. At the time of his election, he became the youngest elected judge in Michigan's history. The courtroom placed him face-to-face with defendants who looked like people he grew up with and sometimes sounded exactly like his younger self. That judicial experience laid the foundation for what came next. Because on September 13, 1999, Mathis debuted his syndicated television courtroom series, Judge Mathis. The show would run for 24 seasons, concluding on May 25, 2023. It reached its 20th season milestone in 2018 and earned both an Image Award and a Daytime Emmy, cementing its place in American television. Through it all, Mathis became known not just as a television judge, but also as a motivational speaker and advocate for urban youth. His public message followed the same arc as his life. Consequences were real, but so were exits. But while the public watched a man who seemed fully formed, steady, and certain, there were parts of his life unfolding off camera. Personal pressures, private struggles, and choices that would eventually reshape everything he thought he had secured. The hidden struggles of Judge Mathis. For Gregory Ellis Mathis, the climb did not end with a law degree. In many ways, that was where the harder part began. After graduating from law school, Mathis faced a barrier that never appears on diplomas. His juvenile criminal record, though years behind him, followed him directly into the process of bar admission. The legal system he was preparing to serve did not simply overlook his past. He was required to prove rehabilitation, stability, and character in a way most applicants never had to. His eligibility to practice law depended on convincing gatekeepers that his transformation was real and permanent. That process forced him to relive decisions he had already paid for. Every form, every review, every question returned him to his teenage years in Detroit. Admission came only after intense scrutiny that tested his patience and resolve. When he was finally allowed to practice law, it was not a quiet victory. It was conditional acceptance into a profession that would continue to watch him closely. That scrutiny followed him into the courtroom. When Mathis ran for judicial office, skepticism surfaced almost immediately. Many within the legal community questioned whether someone with his background belonged on the bench at all. His past was not treated as distant history. It was treated as evidence against him. Every ruling, every sentence, every procedural decision was examined with heightened attention. Mistakes that might have been overlooked in others carried greater consequences for him. As a judge, Mathis understood that credibility was something he had to maintain daily, not assume. He arrived prepared, deliberate, and disciplined. There was no room for improvisation. Authority had to be earned repeatedly, not declared. His courtroom was not just a place of justice, it was a place where he was still being evaluated. That pressure intensified when he moved from a local court to national television. The launch of his show, Judge Mathis, brought success, visibility, and a new set of expectations. But with millions of viewers came constant comparison. Courtroom television had its own hierarchy, its own personalities, and its own critics. Mathis was measured not only as a judge, but also as an entertainer, a public figure, and a symbol. Every episode placed him under a different kind of examination. Viewers debated his rulings. Commentators compared his style to other television judges. Skeptics questioned whether a courtroom show could maintain legitimacy without drifting into spectacle. For Mathis, the challenge was staying grounded in law while operating inside a format built for television. The pressure to remain credible never eased. Ratings mattered, public opinion mattered, and yet the people watching him often expected something different from him than from others in the same space. His background once again framed the conversation. Outside the courtroom, Mathis did not retreat into neutrality. He continued speaking publicly on social justice issues, mentoring formerly incarcerated individuals, and advocating for systemic reform. That openness came with consequences. His commentary on controversial topics, including high-profile criminal cases and questions of accountability, sometimes drew sharp backlash. Not everyone welcomed a television judge weighing in on national debates. Some questioned his motives. Others dismissed his perspective as biased or personal. The same life story that made him relatable to many also made him polarizing to others. Mathis did not separate his career from his beliefs, and that refusal to compartmentalize placed him in the crosshairs more than once. As his television career stretched into decades, another challenge he faced was sustaining relevance. The media landscape changed. Viewers changed. Television itself shifted. What worked in the late 1990s did not automatically translate into the 2010s. Mathis had to adapt to new expectations while resisting the pull toward theatrics that could undermine his credibility. Remaining visible without becoming exaggerated was a constant balancing act. The show had to evolve, but the message could not dissolve. That tension shaped how Mathis presented himself, how cases were framed, and how authority was exercised on camera. Behind all of it was something he has acknowledged openly: the emotional toll of having to prove himself again and again. Success did not grant immunity from doubt. It simply raised the stakes. Each new platform brought a wider audience and a louder chorus of judgment. And yet, even with all of that pressure, the most destabilizing challenges were still ahead. Not professional ones, not public debates, but personal storms that would test him in ways no courtroom ever had. Those controversies didn't just threaten his image, they shook the foundation of his life. The controversies that shook him. By the summer of 2023, Gregory Ellis Mathis had already spent decades shaping a public identity built on discipline, second chances, and moral authority. That reputation made what happened to him feel especially jarring. In July 2023, an incident unfolded outside Mathis's Los Angeles home that would quickly move from a neighborhood dispute into a national controversy. According to later court filings, a Los Angeles Department of Water and Power employee named Ricardo Acosta was performing municipal work in the area. As part of that work, Acosta was operating a dump truck that, for a period of time, blocked the driveway leading out of Mathis's garage. The situation, as described in the lawsuit, escalated when Mathis attempted to leave his property and found his exit obstructed. Acosta alleged that Mathis became visibly angry over the blockage and demanded that the truck be moved immediately. What might have ended as a brief argument between a homeowner and a city worker instead became something far more serious. According to Acosta's claim, Mathis made a verbal threat involving a firearm, suggesting harm if the truck was not moved. The allegation did not involve any physical action, but the language attributed to Mathis was enough to trigger concern, especially given his public role. Acosta later stated that the encounter left him shaken and uncertain about his safety. At the time of the incident, no immediate criminal charges were filed. The confrontation did not result in an arrest or an on-the-spot police intervention that became public record. For months, the matter remained largely unknown outside those directly involved, but that changed in December 2024. When Acosta reportedly filed a lawsuit citing the July 2023 confrontation as the basis for legal action. The filing transformed a private dispute into a public narrative, opening Mathis to scrutiny not just as a private citizen, but as a nationally recognized judge and television figure. Mathis responded quickly and firmly. He publicly denied ever threatening Acosta or any city worker with a weapon. In his statements, he emphasized that the allegations were false and exaggerated, inconsistent with both his personal conduct and his long record in public service. He pointed to his decades-long reputation as a judge, mentor, and advocate for justice as evidence that the claims did not align with who he is or how he operates. Yet, the denial did not stop the story from spreading. Media coverage accelerated as soon as the lawsuit became public. Entertainment and news outlets reported extensively on the allegations. Headlines focused on the contrast between Mathis's courtroom persona and the behavior described in the lawsuit. For many readers and viewers, the story was unsettling precisely because of who Mathis was supposed to represent. He was widely known as a figure of order and accountability, someone who lectured defendants about consequences and self-control. Seeing his name connected to claims of a heated confrontation with a public worker challenged that image. Public reaction was divided. Some defended Mathis, pointing out that the allegations were unproven and stressing the importance of due process. Others expressed disappointment, saying the incident, regardless of how it ultimately played out in court, reflected poorly on someone who built a career on moral authority. For Mathis, the timing added another layer of complexity. The lawsuit surfaced after the conclusion of Judge Mathis, which ended its long television run in May 2023. Instead of closing one chapter quietly, he found himself confronting a new narrative just months later, one that threatened to redefine how the public remembered him. The case also placed pressure on the story Mathis had spent years telling about himself, the story of redemption, growth, and control over past impulses. The allegations, whether substantiated or not, reopened questions about temperament, restraint, and how much a person can ever truly outrun their earlier life. As the legal process moved forward, Mathis continued to reject the claims outright, maintaining that no threat occurred and that the incident was being mischaracterized. But by then, the damage had already begun. Years before the Los Angeles dispute surfaced, Gregory Ellis Mathis found himself at the center of another incident, this time in the city where his story began. In August 2019, Mathis was in downtown Detroit, outside Flood's Bar and Grill, when a disagreement unfolded between him and a valet worker assigned to retrieve his vehicle. According to reports at the time, Mathis had been waiting approximately 40 minutes for his car. As the delay stretched on, frustration began to build. When the valet finally approached, the interaction quickly became tense. Accounts differ on what followed, but the disagreement centered on confusion over the car keys and the length of the wait. Voices were raised, words were exchanged. What might have remained a private argument soon turned into a public allegation. The valet worker claimed that during the exchange, Mathis spat on him. The accusation was serious, particularly given Mathis's standing as a judge and public figure. Soon after, the Detroit Police Department confirmed they had received a complaint regarding the incident. As news spread, Mathis responded publicly and forcefully. He strongly denied the accusation and did not attempt to minimize the confrontation itself. Instead, he drew a clear line between verbal frustration and physical misconduct. First of all, it was a 40-minute wait, and when he came, I yelled at him and asked why he would take my car for 40 minutes, or the keys to my car. He began to apologize, and then he said something I think I went to the store, or something that was more ridiculous than the apology. So we had a verbal back and forth, and that was the extent of it. It was no spitting. Mathis acknowledged that tempers flared and that the exchange became heated. He did not deny raising his voice. What he denied outright was any act of physical disrespect. According to Mathis, multiple witnesses were present and could corroborate his account. He also framed the incident within the context of his long relationship with Detroit. He emphasized that this was his hometown, the city that shaped him, and suggested that the allegation did not align with how he conducted himself, especially in a public setting surrounded by others. Detroit police opened an investigation into the matter. However, the case stalled almost immediately. Investigators later stated that they were unable to proceed because the valet worker did not provide a formal statement, despite repeated attempts to contact him. Without cooperation from the complainant, law enforcement could not move forward. As a result, no criminal charges were filed against Mathis. Legally, the matter ended there, but publicly, it lingered. The story generated attention largely because of who Mathis was. As the host of Judge Mathis, he had spent years lecturing litigants on self-control, respect, and accountability. Seeing his name linked to a heated confrontation with a service worker created an uncomfortable contrast for many observers. Some viewed the incident as overblown, pointing to the lack of charges and the absence of a formal statement. Others argued that even without legal consequences, the episode reflected poorly on a figure so closely associated with discipline and fairness. For Mathis, the controversy did not derail his career. The show continued. His public appearances went on as scheduled. But the incident did not disappear entirely. It became one of those stories that resurfaces later, cited as part of a broader pattern, when new allegations emerge. And as later events would show, this would not be the last time Mathis's private frustrations became a public conversation. Not all of Gregory Ellis Mathis's public controversies involved confrontations on sidewalks or outside restaurants. Some unfolded entirely online, and one in particular began with a film. Mathis served as executive producer on the biopic The First Lady of BMF, The Tonessa Welch Story, a project directed by Vivica A. Fox. The film centered on Tonessa Welch, a figure connected to the Black Mafia family story, but it was told from a perspective focused on her personal life and role rather than the broader criminal empire narrative. That distinction mattered, especially to rapper 50 Cent. 50 Cent has long been associated with BMF-related projects of his own, including television productions that helped define the public's understanding of the organization. When news of the Welch biopic surfaced, he publicly criticized the film and questioned its legitimacy. His comments also took aim at Vivica A. Fox, referencing their past personal relationship and casting doubt on her involvement in the project. The remarks were blunt and dismissive, delivered in a tone that left little room for nuance. For Mathis, this crossed a line. Rather than staying silent, Mathis responded publicly. He posted a video message addressing 50 Cent directly, defending both the film and Vivica Fox. In the video, Mathis criticized what he saw as unnecessary disrespect and told 50 Cent to respect women and stop disparaging Fox publicly. Mathis made it clear that his reaction was not about industry competition. It was about conduct. He stated that while he and 50 Cent shared similar backgrounds, both having risen from difficult environments, that common ground did not excuse public attacks or personal disrespect. The response caught attention quickly. Seeing a long-serving television judge directly address one of hip-hop's most outspoken figures was unexpected. Mathis did not raise his voice or posture aggressively, but the message was clear. Public reaction split almost immediately. Some praised Mathis for standing up to a powerful celebrity and defending Vivica Fox against what they viewed as unnecessary public shots. They saw his response as measured and principled, especially in an industry where silence is often safer than confrontation. Others viewed the exchange differently. Critics argued that engaging publicly with 50 Cent only amplified the drama and drew Mathis into entertainment world disputes that had little to do with justice or public service. To them, the response felt out of place for someone with Mathis's background and stature. Regardless of perspective, the incident added another entry to Mathis's growing list of public controversies. It showed that he was willing to confront high-profile figures directly when he believed a line had been crossed, even if doing so invited criticism or complicated his public image. Yet, none of these controversies came close to what was unfolding at home, because while the headlines focused on arguments and accusations, something far more fragile was quietly breaking. And when his marriage finally entered the spotlight, fans were stunned to learn what was happening behind closed doors: the heartbreaking divorce filing. For most of his public life, Gregory Ellis Mathis was known not just for his courtroom authority, but for the stability of his home. While many high-profile marriages unraveled under pressure, his appeared steady, private, and enduring. At the center of that story was Linda Yvette Reese Mathis. Born in 1963, Linda built a life grounded in education and service. She worked as a teacher before later devoting herself to philanthropy and community initiatives, often alongside her husband. In public, she was a consistent presence, calm, composed, and supportive, appearing with Mathis at events and milestones without seeking the spotlight for herself. Greg and Linda met in Detroit in the early 1980s, when Mathis was still completing law school. Those were not glamorous years. He was still building, still proving, still balancing ambition with responsibility. In 1985, they married, beginning a union that would last several decades. As his career rose from local judge to national television figure, Linda remained beside him. Over time, their marriage became publicly admired. In an industry known for short-lived relationships, theirs appeared resilient. They raised 4 children together, each carving out distinct paths. Jade Mathis became an attorney and motivational speaker, openly discussing mental health advocacy. Kamara Mathis focused on philanthropy and family-centered projects. Amir Mathis pursued creative and entrepreneurial ventures. But Gregory Mathis Jr., who works in media and entertainment, stepped into public visibility in a deeply personal way. In 2022, during the airing of Mathis Family Matters, Greg Jr. publicly came out as gay. That moment was later discussed in a July 2022 interview with GLAAD, where father and son spoke candidly about the experience. Greg Jr. shared that he had first come out privately to close friends and family while in college, years before making it public. He admitted he had not been living fully, truthfully, held back by fear of discrimination and the pressure of his father's public profile. Mathis responded with unconditional support. He said he respected his son's courage to live openly and acknowledged that learning his son had felt constrained for years was deeply troubling. He expressed pride in him for choosing authenticity and using his platform to inspire others. From the outside, the family appeared united, honest, and grounded. But by early 2024, subtle changes became noticeable. Mathis posted less frequently about Linda on social media. The shift was quiet, not announced. His last clearly positive post featuring her came in January 2024, when he shared photos of the two celebrating the holidays in Cabo, calling it a great way to end 2023. Behind the scenes, reports later described growing emotional distance and communication issues. Nothing public confirmed a crisis, but the absence of reassurance began to speak for itself. Then, in August 2024, speculation exploded. Social media and gossip outlets circulated claims that Mathis had fathered a side baby outside his marriage. Blogs and entertainment sites amplified the rumor, framing it as a scandal connected to marital breakdown. The phrase itself quickly attached to his name, trending online despite the lack of evidence. The allegations centered on infidelity, claims that Mathis had cheated and had a child with another woman. But no proof ever emerged. No documentation, no confirmation, just repetition. Mathis addressed the rumors publicly. Speaking to TMZ, he denied cheating outright. He said, "Maybe I'll be the example for another man, a cautionary tale. Don't neglect your wife. That's what happens, guys." He clarified that while he had neglected his wife emotionally, there was no infidelity. He did not deny fault, only the accusation. And despite the viral nature of the rumor, no evidence of a side baby ever surfaced. Still, the damage was already done. On August 22, 2024, Linda Mathis filed for divorce. Court documents cited irreconcilable differences and listed their separation date as July 17, 2024. She requested spousal support while also asking for the requirement to be waived, a detail that suggested complexity rather than simple division. The reaction was immediate. Fans were stunned. A marriage that had lasted nearly 40 years appeared to be ending not with bitterness, but with heartbreak. Yet the separation was brief. After 3 weeks apart, both Greg and Linda acknowledged they had begun working on their marriage daily. They spoke privately, rebuilt communication, and addressed what had been ignored for too long. By November 2024, they were seen together again in interviews. During one appearance, Mathis leaned in and kissed Linda on the cheek, a small gesture, but unmistakable. Linda spoke openly about the process, saying, "We've enjoyed our time doing that, each and every day, and it's just been progressively great." Mathis, for his part, described the separation in deeply personal terms. He compared the pain to losing his mother, calling it devastating. For someone who had endured public scrutiny, legal battles, and controversy, this was different. This loss cut inward. Do you think Linda and Greg made the right choice by fighting for their marriage? Let us know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.